Good morning, everybody. How are you on a Saturday morning? Welcome to the Empowered Career Woman podcast. My name is Cathy Telles, and I'm your founder and your host for this podcast. And I'm so excited that you're joining me today. It is Saturday. I have coffee in hand, and I am excited to kind of talk about today's topic of becoming a better communicator. But before we even dive into today's topic, wow, this week has been nuts. Around the world, it's around the country actually, with Hurricane Milton. Oh, wow, I have to say, I really, really want to say my thoughts and prayers are with all of you who had to battle this devastation in Florida. And I'm just thankful that, the death toll hasn't like increased too much, but I know that there's some devastation in the Florida and the whole northeast part of the country. So, um, you know, thoughts and prayers with everyone who was affected by Hurricane Milton. I know how tough that is to go through. Um, I went through actually a hurricane years ago when we were living in Houston. Katrina had hit Louisiana at the time. And a couple months later, we actually had Hurricane Rita. And a lot of people don't hear too much about Rita because it hit the coast of Houston. But my gosh, the stress of having to evacuate the Houston area, what usually would take us, from Houston to Austin, probably about 2.5 hours, it took us 6.5 hours to get to Austin. And that was the most stressful time. And so I can only imagine all of those folks who were trying to evacuate the whole Tampa, Orlando area. Again, my thoughts and prayers are with all of you. And I pray that you guys can recover and that you guys can pick your guys' selves back up again. So, anyways, with that being said, just very fortunate. I was reflecting yesterday how fortunate I am, or we are in our life, how, uh, you know, life is so short. And, things like the hurricane and recently, I think I told you guys last week where I have a friend who's battling cancer, and you hear all these things, and I just wanted to reflect and just say how thankful I am with life. And so, anyways, I'm gonna keep on going. But so today's topic, you guys, is about becoming a better communicator. Um, so I have had several people who have reached out to me because one person in particular just kind of shared with me how their boss was the way that that boss communicates with them is just really defensive. And the person who reached out to me is like, oh my gosh, I want to be defensive back, but I know I shouldn't be. And so, as leaders in the workforce, as communicators, managers, if you have direct reports, this is a tough skill that you have to build up. And I have to say, I have had some struggles myself when I first became a brand new manager. Um, when I first became a director, I was 29 years old, you guys, and I had no earthly idea what I was doing. I had been an assistant director before, and I was learning from my previous manager, and my previous manager was a terrible communicator. Terrible. He would yell at us, he would cuss at us, he would, oh my gosh, I don't even know. I mean, I honestly don't know how he wasn't fired sooner. Um, but I learned, like, whoa, like the way that he approached people was just not right. I didn't feel good. I would let him know that that wasn't right, that wasn't okay. Sometimes he would speak to me in a really degrading fashion, and I didn't like it, and I had to vocalize what I didn't like. And the good news is that he reflected on that, and he communicated with me better because I set the boundaries with him. However, the way that he spoke with other people in on the team and the office was just a terrible, terrible thing. Eventually, he did get fired, and I took his place as the new director. And I was 29 years old. I mean, what do you know at 29? Okay, all right. I have listeners out there who are like, wait a minute. I know a lot at 29 years old, but for me personally, at 29, I had no earthly idea how to lead a team, how to manage a team. I didn't know how to communicate well. I thought I was a good communicator. I mean, my goodness, my bachelor's degree was in communication, so you would think that I knew how to communicate, but it was tough. I struggled that first several months, and I didn't cuss at anybody. Don't get me wrong. That wasn't the way that I managed, but I was really hard on people. I remember somebody said, "Oh yeah, Kathy is like a bull in the china store," because something would come up in an email, or I mean, I would blow it out of proportion, and I was always defensive. Like I always wanted to be right, and I wanted to be right. I think at the time in my career, I didn't want to fail as a new director. I was leading a large team. I think about maybe 15 to 17 people. And again, I had no earthly idea what I was doing. I thought I did because I knew I was a top performer in my company. And if I could tell them how to do it the way I did it, that made me successful, that they would take the way that they would take it, I guess. No, they did not. Oh my goodness. That was such a struggle, my goodness. And until I finally had a new leader come into place. And um, Aaron, if you're listening, thank you so much for your guidance and your support. Today, he's still even a mentor. If I need help, I can call on him anytime. He is such a great communicator. I don't know if it's because he's a pastor at a church or because he had people who was surrounded by him that taught him how to communicate well. But I learned a lot from him, and um, I struggled though. I mean, the things that I would do, like I don't know if you guys ever feel this way when you're at work, but whenever you get an email and that email is just so off-putting, and the first response that you want to do is you want to like tell that person off in an email. And so I remember emailing, and then Aaron telling me, okay, before you even hit the send button, make sure you reread through it and see it from their standpoint. And boy, that was tough because I wanted to hit that send button so fast and so quick that, and I did a couple of times, and then I realized that that's not a good thing. I need to take a step back, and so that was my experience as a brand new manager, as a brand new director, and it was a really tough thing for me to learn. I remember meeting with one of my employees, and I really loved her, and we had a great relationship, but she was underperforming at the time. And I remember having a really, really tough conversation with her, but I think my delivery was just not right. And she was crying. And she said, I hope you don't talk to your husband the way that you just talked to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize how bad I was until that moment. And that for whatever reason, that incident and that experience hit home for me. And I realized that I really needed to take time to learn about who I am and how I could become a better communicator and how I wanted to become a better leader, honestly. And I think that first step of reflecting, knowing that you're not going to always be right, is was the key thing that really hit home for me. And so uh, I took it upon myself to invest in myself and to do the work. And so for all of you ladies out there who are struggling with that, even with, these last few weeks I've been talking about, building up courage and finding your group of people to support you and whatnot. But the most important thing is, like, how do you develop yourself as a person? Like, what mark and what brand do you want to build for yourself? It's not even just a brand. Like, who do you want to be? And I realized when I had that conversation with that one employee and I made her cry. I mean, my gosh, I made her cry. This is a woman who was probably double my age at the time. As I said, I was 29 years old, had no earthly idea. And she was definitely double my age. And I made her feel that way. And I walked out of that office hating how I made her feel. And so I made a point to myself that I was going to do better. I was going to do better, not just for her, I was going to do better for myself. I was going to do better for myself so that I could help the rest of my team. Because at that time, when the transition had happened with my old boss um, getting let go and I was taking it over, we were on the struggle bus, guys. I mean, um, in recruitment, when you're not hitting targets, that's a problem. And so I needed to figure out a way in order for me to communicate better with my team and so that we could perform better ultimately. And so here's the steps. I mean, every week I always talk about different steps, and I hope that these steps work for you. But these are the steps that I took to help build myself. So, number one, I had to stop being right. It is hard. That's probably one of the hardest things that anyone can do, especially in communication. Now that, this is not really just for work, but it really pertains to work because if you're, I mean, I have been talking to a lot of friends and some listeners who are, they're leaders in their work, they manage a team, they have direct reports, and I hear these different conversations and they ask me, like, how do you stay so calm under such pressure? And it took a lot of work and it took many, many years for me to develop myself on this. But that first thing I have to say for all of you ladies, especially as you guys are building up your business, as you are building up your career, and as you're moving up into the company, and maybe you have now direct reports, maybe you don't have direct reports, but you have colleagues that you have to work with, you don't have to always be right. Okay. Let's just put it out there. You do not have to always be right. Um, for whatever reason in my head, I thought, oh man, I need to prove my point because I know what I'm doing. I know exactly how it works. You don't know what you're. That's what was going. That is what was going through my mind when I needed to, like, fight for my my thought process in a discussion. And I, you know, I realized that I don't have to always be right. And the second piece is I needed to listen more. Being a good communicator, it's not just about talking. It really isn't. It really is about listening to the other person. And what's so critical about listening is when you listen, you start to find out where that other person is coming from. My gosh, you guys, this is not just in business. This is even in life and in work. I mean, I sometimes would have, I remember early stages of my marriage even, I needed to be right and I needed to tell my husband, like, nope, this is how it's going to be done, and he had his way, and then we would argue about things until I realized that let me listen to his thought process. And his thought process was actually really good. And I needed to hear that. And so these steps here not only will help you in the career space and at work, but it can also help you with your spouse, your significant other, your kids, colleagues, even friends. So pay attention. Um, don't have to always be right, is number one. And two, you got to start listening. Shut that mouth a little bit. Remember, I talked about this in episodes a few weeks ago with that 80-20 rule. Well, if you're 80% talking, you're probably not listening enough, and you're not gathering enough information, from what the other person is saying. And so start doing the opposite. 80% listening. Listen to that other person. Listen to your colleagues. Listen to your team members. Like as I mentioned this week, this one person had approached me saying that their boss had, the way that they communicated with the team was just not great. And I realized that uh, that person really needs to start listening and start to, process the fact that they don't have to always be right, and they need to truly take a step back and listen to their team. If they don't listen to their team, unfortunately, that team will probably falter, because I have seen it before. I've been through it before. And so, listening, when you're listening, you get to understand that other person's thought process. You get to actually open up your mind to different ideas. And as I said, when I listen even to my husband, man, I'm like, wow, that's actually a really good idea, and I never even thought of doing something like that. And I was open to it. And so, even being open to what you're listening about is going to be critical to you as a communicator. Um, the other piece that I started doing for myself to develop myself was I started reading books. I mean, I'm talking about, I read a ton of books, and I still read a lot of books. I mean, you can't see here on my whole shelf here. I have a lot of leadership books. I have a lot of books on communication, leadership, attitude, servant leadership, whatever you can think about, opening, like outward mindset versus an inward mindset. There's so many different books that I have read to develop myself as a person, as a leader, and as a communicator. But I do have some books that I do want to share with you guys, and I know this is a lot of educational things that I'm telling you, but if you have the moment to develop yourself and read some books, here's like a few of them. I grabbed four of them. So, John Maxwell, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Oh my gosh. And ironically, this one came from one of my assistant directors. And he writes, I hope this book blesses and inspires you to reach for the fullest of your potential. And I love this book. I've gone through this book maybe multiple times. You see, it's like kind of already teared up a little bit because I've read through it so many times. But that book has helped me a lot. It is so, so good. John Maxwell, he is an amazing business leader and author. So if you guys have the chance, read this book. Do audio tape, you guys. Nowadays, I mean, when I got this is way back before even Audible even was out. But if you don't have the time, and if you have to do a drive to work and whatnot, go into Audible and then pull it up and get it, and so you can listen to it while you're in the car. When you hear these kinds of things, um, you know going through every day in your life, you start to believe it and you start to do those things. And so, reading that book really was very helpful. Here's another one. This is actually a very easy book. It's called Fish. Attitude is Everything. I think I was given this book. I don't even know who gave me this book, but maybe I bought it. I'm not even sure, but it is on that premise of, in Seattle, how they toss the fish, and how they communicate with one another. How that team, like when you go to Seattle, there's Pike's Place Market, and they throw the fish and all of that good stuff. Anyways, and this one, by the way, is by Stephen London, Harry Paul, and John Christensen. So it is such an easy read, you guys. I mean, it's not even, I don't even know, not even 100 pages. Maybe it's a little bit over 100 pages, but they talk about, how they communicate out in Pike's Place Market. I mean, you never think that what a business it is, but they engage people, they communicate with one another, they are telling each other what needs to happen, and it's so good, you guys. Oh my gosh, this is such an easy read. It's only like 108, 110 pages. You got to read it. Fish attitude is everything. I have a couple more that I'll throw out here as well. Fred Factor, Mark Sanborn. I actually met him a few years ago. He actually has another book called Fred Factor 2. I think I even have that book up there. But Mark Sanborn talks about Fred Factor. This is about this one mailman, who does amazing customer service. And, just reading these stories about different people, whether fiction or not, it is so inspiring, and it makes you want to become a better person. And so, for me, I wanted to become a better communicator. I wanted to become a better leader. I wanted to be able to help build my team. And in order for me to do that, I needed to build myself. So those are three books. And then, lastly, Crucial Conversations. I mean, my gosh, you guys, I don't even know how many times I have read this book with several of my different teams from all over the country, where, this is such a great and powerful book because it talks about having those tough conversations with colleagues or friends and whatnot. And so when you talk about being that communicator, having crucial conversations and how to present those crucial conversations are so critical. So Crucial Conversations, and these ones are Carrie Patterson, Joseph Grenny, Ron McMillan, Al Switzler. You guys, such a good book. Again, another easy book, easy read. Um, and take the time, I mean, maybe only a couple hundred pages, but go through Audible. Like I said, when I got these books, I didn't have Audible, and I read through them. I mean, some of these books that I have, I mean, I've given them away because they were such a powerful book for me to help develop myself as a leader and as a communicator, that I have gifted some of these books out to other friends and employees because they have really helped me. And so let's go back, making sure that you don't have to be right all the time. You don't have to be right. And start listening, you guys. 80% listening, 20% talking. And start developing yourself as a communicator. But how do you do that? Start listening and feeding yourself with some really good stuff. I read books. Another thing that I did was, when I first graduated from college, my husband and I remember we were struggling financially. We had no idea. I mean, that was our first time adulting. And we were like, okay, what are we going to do with our lives after I graduated? And we bought this program by Tony Robbins, and it was called Personal Power. It was Personal Power to the Driving Force. And you guys, it was back when we had CDs, good grief. And to be honest, I go back to them still today because, there's CDs still in our car. So I'll even listen to it when I have a long drive. I'll pop in a CD by Tony Robbins. Oh my gosh, the things that you learn from leaders like that, it really does help you become a better leader and a better communicator. So start feeding yourself with some really good self development books. I mean, nowadays you can even go online, even through Facebook, and there's groups that you can talk about, or like even meetups where you could do, communications class. There's a like a how to become a better leader class. There are so many things that are out there right now. You can go on YouTube. Hello, you can go on YouTube and find ways to become a better communicator. Those are things that I didn't really have back in the day when I was a brand new leader. I mean, as I said, I was 29 years old. I was managing a team of, I don't even know, 15, 17 people. And I did not know what the heck I was doing. And I did it wrong. And thankfully, I had that leader who really took the time to help develop me. And I started to develop myself also. And I took the time to read these books so that I could communicate better with my team members. And so, as you know, circle back here, I mean, when I started to do those things early on, when I was 29, now 30 years old, I became, you know, one of the top performing leaders in my organization, and my team was one of the best in the country for years. And even when I left Houston and I got promoted to go to Dallas, I had one of my team members follow me. He actually, him and his family, they sold their house and then they picked up and they followed me. And because he said that he believed in my leadership and my leadership style and how I communicated with him. And I felt so fortunate that people actually believed in me that much that they would follow me that way. And then when I left Dallas and I moved to Phoenix, I had another employee, you know, leave Houston area and followed me to the Phoenix market. And it's really cool to see that how I develop myself and how I develop my team members. They trusted me and they believed that I was going to help them conquer whatever obstacles that they were going to face. And it was because I started to listen. I didn't have to be right all the time. And I started to self develop and do things like read books and listen to positive things that will help me become a better communicator and leader. And so, and now you fast forward it here today as I lead another group of folks in my company. Wow, I can see how I have so much patience. There are that, you know, the first initial instinct, I still get it. I mean, people still kind of piss me off. Don't let's not say that they don't. However, I have a lot more patience and I ask more questions and I want to get to know their side of things so that I can understand where they're coming from. And when I start to understand that, you know, this is where they're at, then I can teach them ways on how to overcome even whatever they're going through. And so I feel like I have made like full circle being in the industry, being in just the business world for so many years and being able to develop so many different team members and leaders. I mean, I have built so many leaders from my past and I'm just so grateful that I had that opportunity. And so anyways, this podcast episode, it is about building yourself as a better communicator. This is not just for in the business world, this is all about building yourself even as a communicator at home with your spouse, with your significant other, with your kids, with your friends, with colleagues at work, with anyone that you come across. Even if you go to the grocery store and the person, the cashier really just ticked you off, how do you communicate back without being so defensive and always having to be right? Trust me, it makes a huge difference. So I know that I gave you a lot of information. I mean, it's now 30 minutes. I can't believe I've been talking for 30 minutes, but there is so much more to unpack. I will talk a little bit more about leadership and leadership development next week. So let's just kind of close this out now. I just want to say thank you so much for all of you listeners who have been such a great um, supporter of me and this Empowered Career Woman podcast. I've gotten so many texts. I say this every week, but every week I get more texts and I get more calls and I get all of these different people who have approached me and have said how much I have changed their life. And so I hope I can do that and I can continue to do that for you and maybe some other women in your life who definitely need this. So if you have not downloaded my free guide. It's my 5 steps to success. Download it, subscribe to my podcast or to this YouTube channel, and then you'll get a copy of that free guide. And please share this podcast. Share my channel with anyone that you think that might need this. So with that being said, you guys have a happy Saturday. I didn't even have too much sips of my coffee this morning, but I just want to say that I encourage you. I lift you up and I really hope that you have a wonderful empowered career woman day. It's Saturday. It's a gorgeous day out right now in California and I'm going to tackle it with gusto. So I hope you guys do too. I hope you guys have a great day and I will see you guys next week. Tune in later, okay? Have a good one.